What's up, everyone? Kevin Leslie, and quick one today, solo edition of the At the Thousand podcast, and talking about one of my favorite topics, which is erging alone. And the reason this is a very important topic for this time of year is because 1 month tomorrow, or I guess when this comes out, it'll be August 1st. And athletes, whether you are a high school rower or a college rower, regardless of where you're heading, you have give or take a month before you're back with your team back at the boathouse preparing for the fall season. And the reason we're doing a podcast on erging alone is because this is just one of those very, very common questions that I get from whether it's athletes that I'm working with or it's athletes or parents who are messaging me via social media, whatever it may be. I'm always getting in many of my interactions as you get midway through the summer, you get a number of athletes who are starting to get worried that they haven't really done the right things in preparation for the fall season. They haven't spent enough time on the erg, logging their workouts, starting to build the acclimation with the machine. Right? They may have been on the water, they may have been doing a summer rowing program, but they haven't spent any time on the erg and reacclimating themselves to that type of intensity, to exposing themselves to those kinds of workouts. And again, we're inside a month before you're back, and the expectation is that you're coming back prepared to move forward come September, not catch back up come September, where next thing you know, it's the first race of the fall season and you're still just getting back to feeling at full strength on the erg. That's what you want to start to think about. That's what you want to try to avoid. You want to position yourself where when you get back to your campus, if you're a college rower, or the boathouse, if you're a high school rower who's just trying to get ready for this upcoming fall season, you want to get back come September feeling ready to move forward, ready to progress so that you can achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve this fall. So that's what this episode is going to be about. I just released a newsletter. If you go to our website, you can grab it for free, right? Free newsletter. So a lot of what I'm talking about today is going to be something that I sent out earlier this week to people who follow the newsletter. And it's just 6 tips for erging alone. And in reality, whether it's alone or small group, you name it, it's just tips to help athletes. Again, we have this erg. It's a machine that we may have a love-hate relationship. It's just tips to help athletes better set themselves up for success on each and every workout so that they can collect these small wins where fast forward 4 or 5 weeks when you're back with your team, you are now ready to move forward, right? That's what these are about. So again, regardless of your starting point, I think some of these are going to be applicable to everyone, regardless of whether you've been erging all summer or you're just getting back on the machine for the first time after summer rowing, or maybe a little bit of time off from everything, right? Maybe you're coming back from a long vacation and you're like, I got a couple weeks to get kind of back into the groove of things. Okay, well, this is going to be a great episode for you. So let's dive in. 6 tips for better consistency on the erg as you try to maximize August, right? August specifically. So the first one is negative split. Negative split. And the reason I list that one first is oftentimes, or to me, when you're erging alone, which to me is one of the best skill sets you can possibly acquire as an aspiring college rower, you got to learn how to erg on your own. But in your approach to that, one of the best ways to set yourself up is via negative splitting each and every workout. So regardless of what your goal is, or depending on what your goal is, starting out a little bit more conservative and building momentum as you go. Because oftentimes when we're training by ourselves, we try to go straight to a split target that we can hold when we're in a group of 40 athletes and there's music blaring, we're in a boathouse, we got coaches yelling behind us. We try to go right out at that split, regardless of whether it's steady state or a higher intensity piece. But negative splitting, right, starting a little bit more conservative, allows you to do what I call downhill rowing. Collect momentum as the workout progresses, as the piece progresses. Starting out conservative, finding a pace that you can start to establish that rhythm, knowing that you're by yourself, and collecting that momentum as the piece progresses. So to me, every workout that you do on your own should be a negative split approach, should be downhill rowing, because your goal is hopefully by the last third of that workout, you're feeling you have that little bit of energy, you have that momentum going where you can really attack the last third because you were smart and set yourself up for success. So again, whether it's 3 by 20 minutes, whether it's 6 by 5 minutes and you're just working through a progression, you're just trying to set yourself up where the second half is faster than the first half, right? That's negative splitting, right? That's downhill rowing. Second one, number 2, intervals. This one, I think, is very crucial for a lot of athletes who they look at the training plan that was sent out to them by their coaches at the end of spring, and they look at it and they're like, okay, well, 3 by 20 minutes or, 2 by 40 minutes, or maybe it's a higher intensity piece, right? 5 by 10 minutes, 4 by 10 minutes, whatever. And they look at those workouts and they try to, again, same idea as is going to be a recurring theme in this conversation. They try to do something that they can usually do when they're with a group and when they're with their team and the music's blaring, the coaches are fired up. They try to go out at a split, and then they realize, okay, well, let's say I'm doing 3 by 20 minutes of steady state. They get through the first one and it was a lot harder than they thought, right? Normally it's a relatively mild workout and they get to the end of that first piece and they're like, wow, I really pushed myself, or that felt way harder than it normally does. Now I'm rethinking how I want to approach the next one. And oftentimes they actually just give up. They don't actually do the next one, right? They get through the first 20 of a 3 by 20 minute workout. It was way more challenging than they thought. And they get 5 minutes into that second piece and they're like, you know what? I had it today. You see it all the time, right? Happens all the time. Happens to everyone. Happens to me. In those moments, think about intervals, the piece within the piece. So the example that I used in the newsletter was, if you're doing 3 by 20 minutes and you get through that first one and you're feeling great, or you're feeling okay, right? It's a little bit harder than you're expecting. Well, that next one, just to get through the work, you break it up, right? So it's 20 minutes. So I'm not feeling 100% after that first piece. I'm going to go 4 minutes on, 1 minute easy times 4. That's your 20 minutes right there, right? So 4 minutes at the zone that workout requires, 1 minute just an easy paddle, right? Maybe it's just sub 3 minute splits, right? What I call G plus for those that are familiar with the garage or familiar with some of my training, right? You're just going hard enough to keep yourself mentally engaged. Then you're back on for 4 minutes. Then you're 1 minute off. Then you repeat it again 2 more times. That's your 20 minutes. So although it wasn't the straight through 20 minutes, it was set up in a way where, okay, the majority of it was on at my desired zone, but I did have some off strokes in the middle to help me mentally reacclimate, recharge to attack that next one. And now when you walk away from the machine, you have 60 minutes of completed work rather than, hey, I just did the first one. I didn't feel too great, so I gave up on the last 2. That's what you want to think about. And you can do that for any workout, right? Breaking it up into intervals or pieces within the piece, which is really probably what that should be labeled, right? Pieces within the piece, breaking it up so that you can get through and complete those workouts and walk away having gotten the volume in with some adjustments to the intensity. Number 3. All right, here we go. Moving along. Hybrid training. So number 3, hybrid training. So this one is essentially, hey, if you spent the last 2 months, right? So, June and July, very much limited on the erg, whether that was through access or whether that was through conscious choice, which hopefully isn't the case, but we're all human, right? Some athletes, do avoid the erg more than they probably should. But if you have not had access to the erg or you've been avoiding the erg and now you're getting to that moment of 4 weeks from now, I'm going to be back with my team and I have the expectation to be prepared, hybrid training is a really good approach for that. So what I mean by hybrid training is, okay, rather than jumping fully into a full-blown erg workout where 100% of that work is taking place on the erg, consider a hybrid approach where, okay, to start, if it's I guess 3x20 is going to be the example that we use for this podcast. If it's 3x20 minutes, I'm going to do the first two on the erg, and the last piece, I'm going to use the stationary bike, or I'm going to have my running shoes right next to me so I can go out for a run, or whatever it may be, swimming, right? If you have access to that, right? Or even you split it in half, right? I'm looking at 3x20 minutes, but you know what? Rather than doing that, I'm going to do 2x30 minutes. So I'm going to do the first 30 minutes on the erg, and then the second 30 minutes, I'm going to go out for a run or a bike or a swim or whatever it may be, right? Whatever aerobic modality you've been doing up to this point in the summer, whatever you're most confident with, whatever you're most comfortable with, make that an equal share of whatever workout it may be. And again, regardless of the intensity, right? 5x10 minutes. You know what? I'm going to do the first three on the erg. I'm going to do the last two running at a little bit of a higher clip than just a normal steady state run, right? Whatever it may be. But hybrid training is a really good way to blend the two together so that, okay, well, these first two, it might be 50% erging, 50% bike, right? Stationary bike. Okay, well, hopefully by next week, it's 60% erging and 40% bike, all right? And then eventually it's 80%, 20%. And then eventually it's just, hey, last week I'm going all on the erg, right? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fresh. I got a week till school starts. These are when I'm going to grind it out 100% on the erg. So hybrid training is a really good approach for those athletes who may have not been on the machine as much as they wanted to at this point here in late July, early August. Number 4, this is one of my favorites. Rate structure. Rate structuring, specifically test pieces. That's what I alluded to in the newsletter, specifically test pieces. And the reason I say that is a lot of athletes, especially for those of you who are rowing in college, you usually have an erg standard of some sort that you have to come back to, whether it's the first week or, a week or two in. You usually have something that the coaches are going to hold you accountable to make sure that you were up to speed to hopefully, they can trust your fitness enough to start to put you in race lineups in preparation for fall season, right? Most college programs will have some kind of test to hold themselves or to hold athletes accountable. And to me, one of the things I always recommend to athletes is, hey, in that last month, or even all along, but more specifically in the last month of summer, make sure that you start to expose yourself to that test. If you test 5K in the fall, expose yourself to that test here in the summer. If you test 6K, expose yourself to that test in the summer. If you test a 30-minute testing, expose yourself to that here in the summer. And rate structuring, to me, is a very effective way to expose yourself to the test, but take a little bit of the edge off of, I'm doing a test, I'm doing an assessment. So what I mean by that is, okay, well, let's say 5K is the test that you do in the fall, and you're going to do it the first or second week when you're back in September. Okay, well, rather than doing a 5K at open rate where you get 2,000 meters in, you think you can hold the same splits that you could last time you did one, right? Whatever your PR split is, and you get 2,000 meters in and you're like, wow, I cannot sustain this. I am absolutely dying on the erg, and you give up, right? Because you thought you were somewhere and it turns out you weren't, right? And you put all this stress and baggage into it, and all of a sudden you got 2,000 meters in and you're like, yeah, I can't hold that, and I'm a failure, and I have no, prep, or I'm not going to make the team come the fall, right? Or I'm not going to be allowed on the water until I hit the standard, right? Whatever it may be. Rate structuring tests is a great way to, again, take that edge off, but still travel the distance of that 5K under pressure, meaning at intensity. So if it's usually 5K open rate, and you're someone who usually 5Ks at a 28 to 30 to 32, okay, well, you know what? Next week, next Saturday, right? I'm going to treat it like a test day. I'm going to do a 5K, but I'm going to do it at rate 22, right? So it's power per stroke. I'm going to cover that 5K distance. I know that I'm not going to PR because I'm at a significantly lower rate, but I'm going to attack it with the same intent at that low rate, which I'm probably way more comfortable at than jumping right to a 28, 30. Or, you know what? I have been erging a little bit. I feel really good. I want to throw a couple 5Ks in. Okay, well, I normally 5K at 28 to 30 to 32. I'm going to do one again next week, and I'm going to approach it as 2K at rate 22, 2K at rate 24, 1K at rate 26. So there's a little bit of a rate progression throughout the piece to allow you to pick up momentum coming back to downhill rowing, right? Trying to collect momentum as you go throughout the piece. And now you have these little pieces within the piece. There we go, intervals, right? We're breaking everything up, right? Everything's coming full circle. You have these pieces within the piece where, okay, first 2K at 22, second 2K at 24, last 1K at 26. I'm going to attack it. And you have a number to build off of. And if you can 5K rate capped or rate progression in the summer, when you line up with 40 other athletes on your team with the music blaring and the coaches behind you, you're going to have so much confidence heading into that piece because you already did 1 or 2 in the summer. So again, rate progressions, rate structure is a good way to max effort test, but with that edge taken off and with a little bit of restrictions to help better set you up for success. What are we at? 4? That was 4? Okay, number 5. All right, number 5 is a serious one. Pivot. Don't be afraid to pivot. Meaning, short-term memory. One of the key skills in rowing, at least to me, is the ability to have a short-term memory, to realize that today is not the day, and to not let it drag into other aspects of your life. So what I mean by that is, okay, if there are days where you're just not firing on all cylinders, the stresses of, hey, I haven't been on the erg in a while, or, I'm trying to incorporate it a little bit more and I can't. If all those stresses are coming into your life, and there's a day where you're on the machine and you get, again, we're going to use that 3 by 20 minutes analogy or, example. If you get 10 minutes into that piece, that first one, and it's just not happening, it's just not firing, legs are heavy, you're tired, didn't get any sleep, you're trying to get out back on the erg, you're letting the internal talk go on in your head, pivot. Just pivot to the bike, or if it's really serious, just go to the yoga mat, hit the core, hit mobility, and live to fight another day. And then have a short-term memory and don't carry that unsuccessful workout into the next day. Short-term memory, shake it off and move on to the next workout, right? Get some rest, eat some fuel or eat some food, right? Get properly fueled, and then revisit it the next day. In the summer, when you're training by yourself, there's nothing wrong with pivoting. There's nothing wrong with moving or shifting your focus elsewhere and coming back to the erg the next day. With that, it's important where, yes, there is a lesson to be learned there, right? Some days we have to learn how to push through. Some days we have to, hey, if the going if it just ain't happening, there are days where we do have to learn how to push through that and persevere and be resilient. But there are days where you're going to be forced to pivot because you just feel like, hey, it's just not happening today. Just don't let it become a habit, right? If it happens once or twice, okay, that's fine. Happens to everyone. Happens to me. Happens to every athlete out there. But don't let it become a habit. There will be days where you do have to learn how to push through. But again, pivot's number 5 because there are days where you're going to have to adjust. And what you can't do is let that trickle into the next day, because then that next one is already set up for failure. Short-term memory, throw it out the window, move on, get back on the erg the next day. All right, number 6, last one. Find a group, find a partner, find somebody to train with, or somebody to hold you accountable in your training. So what I mean by that is, hey, this one's pretty easy. We're always going to work better with someone there to hold us accountable than being alone in our basement or in our garage trying to go about it by ourselves. Community, team, teammate, someone who's fighting the same fight as you, it's always going to help pull us out of those darkest moments when we're trying to train, especially at intensity. So if you can, call up a teammate. Hey, you know what? Throw your erg in the car, bring it over. I actually know athletes who have done this. Bring your erg over. We'll set it up in my garage. We're going to get this workout in, right? And then we're going to repeat it next week, even if it's just once a week, right? To have someone to train with you, right? If you can logistically make that happen, amazing, right? Do that. If that's a challenge logistically, right? Maybe you're in an environment where no one else is around, or you're on vacation, but you have an erg and you don't have any in-person connection with your team. Okay, there's always a virtual option, but probably a little bit, at least my preference is find an accountability partner. So find a trusted teammate who is equally motivated to you and what you're trying to accomplish, and shoot them a message to be like, hey, I'll send you my screenshots on the erg, you send me yours, right? And let's hold ourselves accountable. And we're not judging each other, we're not judging our speeds and this and that. We have bad days, we're still going to send it, but you're going to hold me accountable, I'm going to hold you accountable. And then once we're back together in September with the rest of the team, now we're ready to move forward, right? And both of us feel better prepared for it. So again, the ideal is always having someone to do it with, whether that's in person or if you have to online. But beyond that, if you don't have that ability, find a trusted teammate, start to exchange those messages, start to feel comfortable sharing your work with someone else who, again, you do trust and who is going through that same fight as you. And again, you're both going to walk away come September feeling very, very motivated and energized because you did hold each other accountable. So that's the six, right? Those are the six tips that, to me, many of them are driven by just real world example. I've used all of these personally for myself. I've implemented them with the athletes that I work with. I've suggested them to athletes who I don't work with in person, I work with remotely. Hey, think about it like this, adjust it like this. I know you're by yourself. Let's approach it this way. All for the purposes of consistency over intensity, which I think is one of my main messages in the summer. And as you approach this last month, that should be your main objective. Consistency over intensity. Can I stack wins each and every day? Whatever the workout is, I have these 6 tips to hopefully help better position myself to get through it and be successful as I go about it. But all I'm trying to do is stack wins. All I'm trying to do is set myself up for success so that I can move on to the next day. So I can keep that momentum going so that 2 weeks don't go by in August and you still haven't made that progress with getting back on the erg and starting to feel like you're ready for the fall. Start today. Use these as guidelines or as things that you can adjust, especially in the moment, right? A lot of them take place in the moment, right? Okay, well, I'm not having a great day. I'm gonna break it up into pieces within the piece, or I'm gonna negative split this next piece, or you know what? I'm halfway through, but it's just not happening today, so I'm gonna pivot to the bike, even right before I pivot to something else. So use those tools as things that you can implement, especially on the fly. But also, I would say my bigger recommendation is be proactive with them, right? Think strategically before a workout. You know what? It's, 5 by 10 minutes. I haven't done this workout in a while. It's asking me to be at rates, 22 to 24. Usually I'm at a rate 20. You know what? I'm going to do the first 2 at 20. I'm going to do the next 2 at 22. I'm going to attack that last one at 24, or maybe for the last one, I start at 22 and I shift up to 24 in the last 5 minutes, right? That's strategically thinking in a way that can hopefully set you up for success. All through that, I'm rolling downhill and I'm collecting momentum as I go, right? Always coming back to that. So with that, good luck with your training. Good luck as you look to capitalize on August and feel better positioned to come September. Again, start today, get back on the machine. Don't avoid the erg. It's not going anywhere, right? Coaches hold us accountable with the erg, right? So we got to use it. We got to get back on the machine and start to build that momentum. If you have any questions, reach out. But again, use these tips. They've worked for me. They've worked for the athletes that I work with personally. And I think they'll work for you too. With that, let's keep moving forward. Happy when this is released, August. And I'll talk to you soon. Peace.